everyone, Ivy League Gaming here, and today we're playing Watcher of Realms. For today's video, I'm gonna do a bit of a guide on Zelus. Let's give this guy some love. Alright, so we're talking about Zelus here because he's one of the rate up heroes for the current event. So there is a rate up chance for Zelus, Salazar, and Zelatu, and well, let's just say I know everyone got a lot more Zelus than they did Zelatu or Salazar. And most people are not too happy with that. And because of the reactions, I think there's a bit of, I don't know, too much negativity around Zelus in the community, it feels. I think he's a bit underrated. And I think too many people are going to see the sad reactions of players. Which myself included. When someone's looking for Zelatu and you pull a Zelus, you are disappointed. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's as bad as people kind of react, right? So let's talk about him. He is part of the cursed cult. And I'm hoping I can get a better lord for him in the future. I'm not really using the lord with him now. But yeah, he has an expensive cost. You see that 29 down there for a cost? The placement cost is what immediately turns people away from using this character or being excited to pull him. 29 is really high. So if you pull Zelus as your first legendary, should he be your very first focus for a DPS to take to 60? No. I do strongly have to say no for that. But that doesn't mean he's bad, and it doesn't mean he can't help out a team and still be a great part of a successful team for something, especially like Guild Raid 1 or Tide or the faction stuff. But this placement cost is a bit too high to sit around and wait for your very first placements. So that is something to think about, but we have a couple heroes that can help with that. Also, his awakening does help with that. So his awakenings are pretty simple, but when we get down, of course, helping our skills is the best part, but this is also the best part. This is equally as good. Cost -3. So this is really nice to see that if you are one of those people that pulled way too many Zelus this weekend when you were wailing out trying to get a Zelatu, well, at least you have a cost reduction of 3 if you pulled 5. Not so bad. It's helpful though. It really is. But he can be enabled by a couple other heroes that help deal with placement costs, and I will talk about that after. But when it comes to his skills, his basic attack cannot be affected by attack speed bonuses, so make sure you know that when gearing him. Focusing on attack and attack percentage is definitely the key, but don't worry about attack speed with him because he cannot take advantage of it with his basic attack. He does generate a ground effect area, dealing extra damage to multiple enemies for 5 seconds, and that's kind of what goes along with his ultimate as well. Deals AoE damage, and over time he deals even more AoE damage, and airborne units take half that damage. His passive increases his damage from the ground area effect, and he also has a passive that adds vulnerability. You definitely want vulnerability in your team if you have a team full of magic damage dealers because it gives a plus 10% damage taken by the enemies. So he can help enable the rest of your team to do more damage. Now, this is going to be something to consider when you're comparing Zelus to your other damage dealers. He might not be the person you put the best gear on, and so he might feel a little bit underwhelming with his own damage, but do remember that he is going to enable your entire team to do more damage, at least the ones that do magic attack. So I think here in the ratings, people do give him fair ratings for where I would say he's good. Obviously, the arena one, he would not be the first person that you place, but maybe the second or the third damage dealer for arena. XP and gold raids, same thing. I think he's usually the third hero that I place. Tide and gear raid 1, he can certainly be used as well. So I really love him. I mean, aesthetically, he is just gorgeous. How does a character that looks this badass and this amazing with such great graphics not have his own fancy video? I really hope they eventually make fancy cinematic trailers for all of the legendaries because I really love them. Even if that means they get rid of some of the epic ones, whatever. But the epics don't need cinematic trailers, but every legendary should. They're amazing. But maybe they're a bit expensive because they are pretty high quality and really gorgeous. But all right, let's get into talking about him a little bit deeper. So when it comes to gear, we're talking full attack focus, stats over sets early on. Once you get into the later stages, you can kind of take advantage of some of those sets that just give you various bonus damage or extra attack overall. Don't worry about the attack speed. And then later game, possibly depending on your gear, you can try to do a bit of a crit rate build with crit damage and solid attack, but do remember that this game does not hold crit rate and crit damage quite as highly as just pure attack build. My Bucket's done some great videos and testing regarding that. If you want to check that out, it's just focusing attack overall is just going to be a little bit more beneficial. So I'm here on Dragon Slayer Community's website. I will link this as well below. I'm always on my Buckets tier list, but I wanted to give some love here too, and just give some varying opinions. After we take a look at these, I'm going to talk about a couple characters that are very good to pair with Zelus, so don't worry, I didn't forget about that. But let's just talk about Zelus himself first. So the overview here for Zelus, let's go down to the ratings. He gives them high in Tide, Guild Raid 1, and Trial. So yeah, the faction trials, the basic trial is going to be really solid for. You're going to need the best of what you got, and he's definitely worthy to gear up pretty well and use in those areas of the game. And like I said, Tide is something you can place without worrying about costs, so of course he's fine there. And Guild Raid 1, as long as he's not your first damage dealer you're placing, you could probably use him as the second or definitely as the third in your team as well, for the sake of some extra damage to help deal with those enemies. If you place him fairly early on and you have a bunch of magic damage dealers, he's going to help enable everybody for more damage, just like we talked about already. Group Arena, he's fine for as well, but you're probably not going to want to place him first because you want to get something down for that very first wave. Stats over sets, as we keep saying, for gear, that's what they have here on his website as well. Let's go down to the description here. Summary. Zelus is a mage with a basic attack range who creates a ground effect area and deals AoE damage to all enemies within it. However, this is unaffected by attack speed increases. The immediate thing to note is his deployment cost 29 is extremely high amount for one unit and immediately restricts his viability in some game modes. And this is only slightly reduced at Awakening 4, which reduces his cost by 3. If you do manage to deploy him, he does respectable damage. Ideally, you want his ground effect area to be where your tank is, so enemies take constant damage. His Nether Mark increases the damage of his ground effect area abilities, while Soul Corruption inflicts vulnerability to magic damage, further increasing the damage dealt. He shines in Campaign, Trial, Tide, and Gear Raid 1. Yeah, I kind of forgot. Campaign, I've been using him to progress in Campaign myself, so it's definitely an area he feels fine for, as long as, again, not the first DPS that you place. Those are kind of what you're looking for with substats. Obviously, crit damage, crit rate build here is not necessarily something you're going to do right away until you have really good gear for it. So just focus attack for the most part. But all right, let's go ahead and switch. All right, so my bucket, let's read his overview first. It's going to be very similar, I think. While offering a decent amount of damage, Zelus has a much higher placement cost than almost anyone in the game. His skills and damage unfortunately don't make up for it, and cannot be used in areas where cost matters. He provides a good debuff, however. It's not that uncommon. It becomes difficult to find a use for Zelus. Early to mid-game Guild Raid 1 he shines the most, but is rarely seen in stages 19 to 21, even with his special artifact. So this could be something to consider for how you build him or what resources you choose to invest in him. I think that's pretty fair. Like, I like Zelus a lot, honestly, but am I going to use all my skill up materials on him first or soon? Probably not. I'm going to prioritize the other characters I've built first. Then eventually, if I find myself with an excess amount of skill resources, I might consider booking him a little bit. But I don't think he's going to be your priority to max out overall. So here, let's see what he puts in. Basic Trial, Tide A+, Guild Raid 1 A+. So this makes sense because, yeah, like I said, early Guild Raid, pretty good. Maybe the later, hardest stages, not so much. But I guess it depends on who else you pull on your account. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, everything is going to be very account dependent. So when we look at only mages, I do have to agree this seems pretty in line with my first opinions. Like Iona, he has above Zelus. And personally, for my account, I definitely use Iona before I use Zelus. Like I use Comet up here, where there he is. I use Comet first, and then I'll place Iona as my second DPS, and then I'll use Zelus usually as my third, for a ranged unit at least. And I do think that's a pretty good strategy because for the longer battles where you have time to kind of ramp up some cost points, I would prefer to place the people with a little bit lower cost first. And Iona definitely shines. And of course, if you have someone like a Comet, Zelus is not going to be your priority. But that doesn't mean you can't try to build him a bit up and include him in your roster. So this is a pretty good summary as well. Now let's talk quick about the heroes I think pair very well with Zelus. So I'm always talking about Dahlin because, well, I have her for one, and she pairs really good with him. So when I first pulled Zelus, I think the first thing my bucket said to me was, "Do you have Dahlin?" And I was like, actually, I just pulled her too. So very quickly, I paired them together off that recommendation, and I definitely have not regretted it. So her passive, every 30 seconds, recovers 13 points cost for the team. Simple enough, right? Really nice. It just adds a bunch to the team overall, and that's really helpful. She's a fighter. She does scale with, she gives a little extra crit damage here with her ultimate. And I think she's worthy to build, honestly, as a fighter for your team. Obviously, some of the legendaries are certainly going to outshine her, but if you have Zelus, she is just perfect to pair with him. So usually, like, I would obviously place her early on in the battle. So as one of my first people to block, like, I should say, if I don't need a defender that's really tanky and I could just throw in a fighter to stall the enemy instead, I'll place her sooner rather than later. So she starts counting this 30 seconds to recover these 13 points. I think that really does help a lot. She's really perfect to pair with Zelus. And if you don't have a Dahlin, I think it's worth it to build a Narvi if you do really want to get your Zelus involved in your content and you are having trouble with your cost placements being a little bit stressful. She actually helps the cost with multiple skills, not just her passive. So her ultimate inflicts a damage or attack bonus on the caster and one random friendly unit and regains 8 points of cost lasting for 10 seconds. So the attack bonus here is 10% extra attack. So she's going to help do more, someone do more damage. And then her passive here, every 18 seconds recovers 10% max HP and gains 3 points of cost. So obviously it's not as big as Dahlin's with her 13 cost, but this is every 18 seconds instead of 30, so it might help you out a little bit sooner in the battle just to place someone a little bit faster. So it's definitely still something you can consider. I do think she is one of those rares worthy to save, and if you are going to save her, well, you can't awaken her yet. As you can see, awakening is not available for every character, which is really weird. I was going to say you might want to save some dupes and awaken her if you're really going to use her as a fighter in your roster. If you have a Zelus and you need some extra fighters, I really think she could be pretty solid as well. But sadly, we can't awaken her yet, although awakenings for the rares are not huge anyway, so it's probably not a big deal. But yeah, I think that kind of sums up the conversation on Zelus. I didn't want to worry too much about showing him in all the content I'm doing per se. I just wanted to talk about him to help you guys figure out where you want to start using him or how you're going to pair him, if he's worthy. And yeah, I think he's absolutely worthy. Just use him as your second or third AoE or ranged DPS, depending on what you're working on. And definitely stick to the areas of the game like noted here. You're not going to be able to use him in others besides campaign. Campaign, you'll be just fine using him to progress in a lot of stages. Try to get him involved, but maybe hold back on resources like your skill ups and save them for a bit more top tier heroes, honestly, for now until you get going and have a lot more resources to spend. But hope this was helpful. I hope you guys appreciated a little bit of love for Zelus. I have been using him from the start. I probably will keep using my Zelus and 6-star him at some point after I build a couple new characters that I got from my summons, which were pretty awesome. So, I had some good summons. That'll be in another video to come. But anyway, yeah, hope this was helpful. Hope you guys have some love for Zelus. He's not terrible. He's just not the best. But that doesn't mean he's not going to be a wonderful addition to your account. And you'll get some use out of him, at least for a while. So thanks for watching, guys. And I'll see you in the next video.